Light rippled across the quantum sensors of the research vessel Horizon, dancing like auroras in the void. Captain Maya Rodriguez watched the readings with growing curiosity. After 3 months of routine stellar mapping in the Carina Arm, something had finally broken the monotony. A signal unlike anything she'd encountered before. "Dr. Chen, what do you make of this?" Maya called to her chief scientist, who was already absorbed in the data stream. The signal pulsed with an otherworldly rhythm, more organic than artificial, yet clearly carrying information. Sarah Chen's fingers flew across her haptic interface, dark eyes reflecting cascading waves of light. "It's like nothing in our databases, Captain. The pattern suggests intelligence, but the medium..." She paused, rechecking her analysis. "It's being transmitted through quantum entanglement. We shouldn't even be able to detect it." Maya leaned forward in her command chair, the subtle movement causing it to adjust to her posture. The Horizon was humanity's most advanced research vessel, built to explore the edges of known space. 5 years ago, when humanity had finally been admitted to the Galactic Assembly, they'd been dismissed as primitive newcomers. Now they were determined to prove their worth. "Can you locate the source?" Maya asked. Lieutenant James Okonjo, their navigation specialist, was already plotting coordinates. "It's coming from the Lyra 238 system, Captain. Specifically, the third planet." His Nigerian accent carried a note of concern. "But there's something strange. The star. It's dying." The main view screen shifted to show a massive red giant, its bloated form consuming nearly half the system's habitable zone. According to their data, it shouldn't have reached this stage for another 1,000,000 years. "Life signs?" Maya asked, though she already suspected the answer. The Assembly's records showed no sentient species in this sector. "Yes," Sarah confirmed, her voice tight with excitement. "But they're unlike anything we've seen. The entire planet appears to be enveloped in a bioluminescent field. And Captain, they're reaching out specifically to us." Maya felt her pulse quicken. First contact scenarios were drilled into every captain's training, but this was different. This wasn't a chance encounter. These beings had somehow detected and contacted them across vast distances using technology that should be impossible. "Plot a course, Lieutenant, but keep us at safe distance when we arrive. Dr. Chen, notify Earth Command and begin first contact protocols." As the Horizon altered course, Maya accessed the Assembly's database, searching for any reference to the Lyra 238 system. There was a single entry, buried deep in the archives, a distress call, logged and dismissed over 50 years ago. The journey took 3 days, even with their most advanced quantum drive. When they finally dropped out of FTL, the sight before them left the bridge crew speechless. The planet was a sphere of living light, pulses of bioluminescence rippling across its surface in mesmerizing patterns. But the beauty couldn't hide the devastation. Massive solar flares from the dying star had already stripped away much of the atmosphere. "We're being hailed," Sarah announced, her voice barely above a whisper. "The signal, it's in perfect English." Maya straightened in her chair. "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was neither male nor female, its tones carrying harmonics that made Maya's skin tingle. "Greetings, children of Earth. We are the Lumini. We have waited long for ones who would answer our call. This is Captain Maya Rodriguez of the Earth research vessel Horizon. We received your signal and came to offer assistance." There was a pause, and Maya sensed a deep weariness in the response. "Many have heard our calls over the decades. The Assembly's great powers deemed us too primitive, too different to be worth saving. But you came without hesitation." Maya exchanged glances with her crew. The Assembly's dismissal of a dying species went against everything humanity stood for. "We're here now. Tell us how we can help." "Our star dies faster than even we anticipated," the Lumini explained. "Our children number only in the thousands now, and our ability to maintain the quantum field that sustains us grows weaker each day. We have sought evacuation, a new home, but the Assembly forbids interference with natural extinction events. The clinical coldness of that policy made Maya's blood boil. She thought of humanity's own close calls with extinction, how close they'd come to destroying themselves before finally reaching for the stars. Every species deserved a chance to survive. "Send us your data," she said firmly. "Everything about your biology, your needs, your quantum field technology. We'll find a way." "Captain," James interrupted softly. "Assembly protocols require us to report this contact. If they've already denied aid." Maya cut him off with a sharp gesture. "The Assembly didn't send us here. Earth did. And humanity doesn't abandon those in need." She turned back to the comm. "We'll need time to understand your needs and develop a plan. But I promise you this, you will not face this alone any longer." The response came in a wave of light that washed over the ship, carrying with it feelings of profound gratitude and hope. As the Horizon scientists began their work, Maya knew they were crossing a line. The Assembly would not look kindly on their interference. But looking at the dying star and the brilliant world it would soon consume, she couldn't bring herself to care. Humanity had joined the galactic community to make a difference, not to blindly follow rules that condemned innocent beings to death. Whatever the consequences, they would face them together. The Lumines signal pulsed once more, stronger now. "Perhaps," they said, "this is why we waited. Not for the most advanced, but for the most compassionate." Maya smiled grimly. Compassion had always been humanity's greatest strength, even when others saw it as weakness. Now it was time to prove just how far that compassion could take them. The message from Earth Command arrived exactly as Maya had expected, curt, disapproving, and ultimately useless. She stood in her private quarters aboard the Horizon, reading it for the third time, as if the words might somehow change. By direct order of the Assembly Council, all contact with the non-registered species designated Lumini must cease immediately. The natural progression of stellar evolution cannot be interfered with. Maya's hand clenched into a fist. Down in the science labs, Dr. Sarah Chen and her team had worked for 72 hours straight, unraveling the mysteries of Lumini biology. They weren't just bioluminescent. They were living quantum computers, each individual a node in a vast, synchronized network of consciousness. Their bodies literally processed light into thought. A soft chime announced Sarah's arrival. The scientist looked exhausted, but her eyes burned with intensity. "Captain, you need to see this." In the main lab, holographic models showed the deteriorating star in accelerated time. James Okonjo stood beside them, his usual calm demeanor shaken. "The stellar decay is accelerating," he explained. The Lumines models were conservative. At current rates, their planet has less than 3 months before total atmospheric failure. Sarah pulled up another display showing complex molecular structures. "Their quantum field technology is incredible, Captain. They've evolved to exist in a state of partial quantum entanglement, sharing consciousness across their entire species. But maintaining that field requires immense energy. Energy they're losing as their star dies." Maya finished. "How many are left?" "Just over 4,000. Sarah replied softly. "They're using most of their remaining strength to protect their children. The adults." She swallowed hard. "They're burning out their own quantum matrices to buy more time." The implications hit Maya like a physical blow. The Lumini were sacrificing themselves, their very consciousness, to keep their children alive. And the Assembly had deemed them too primitive to save. A new alert flashed on the main screen. "Incoming transmission from the Assembly Council," James announced. The holographic image of Council Representative Zarin materialized, tall, crystalline, and coldly efficient. Captain Rodriguez, the being's translucent form, towered over them. "Your presence in the Lyra 238 system violates Assembly directives. The species you encountered was evaluated and found unsuitable for preservation. Their quantum-based biology poses unacceptable risks of contamination to established civilizations." Maya stepped forward, keeping her voice steady despite her anger. "With respect, Representative, they're a sentient species facing extinction. They've developed technologies we barely understand. How can you justify? Your species is young, Captain, Zarin interrupted. You do not yet comprehend the delicate balance we maintain. The Lumini's ability to affect quantum states through biological processes could destabilize countless communication and transportation systems. The Assembly's decision is final. The transmission cut off, leaving them in tense silence. Maya turned to her officers. Options. Sarah spoke first. Their quantum technology is amazing, but it's not just scientific advancement. It's art, philosophy, a whole way of experiencing reality we've never imagined. They don't just share thoughts, they share dreams. James had been quiet, running calculations. The Horizon's cargo holds could be converted, theoretically. We'd need to modify the radiation shielding to allow specific wavelengths of light through, create an artificial quantum field matrix. He paused. But it would take weeks, and we'd be violating direct orders. Maya walked to the lab's viewport, watching the pulses of light that rippled across the Lumini's dying world. She thought of humanity's own history, how many times they'd nearly destroyed themselves before learning to work together, how close they'd come to losing everything that made them unique. Send word to Dr. Patil in engineering, she said finally. I want those cargo hold modifications started immediately. Sarah, work with the Lumini to design a portable quantum field generator. James, plot potential routes to uninhabited systems compatible with their needs. Captain, James hesitated. The Assembly will send ships to stop us. Maya nodded grimly. Probably. But they'll have to catch us first. She turned to face her crew. I took an oath to explore, to learn, and to protect. Nothing in that oath said anything about letting innocent beings die, because they're inconvenient to the status quo. As her officers dispersed to their tasks, Maya received another signal from the planet's surface. The Lumini's voice carried new harmonics, hope tinged with fear. We sensed the Assembly's rejection. They said, you risk much by remaining. We risk more by leaving. Maya replied, my people have a saying. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good people to do nothing. We won't do nothing. The response came in a wave of light that carried gratitude deeper than words. But as Maya watched her crew begin their work, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were starting down a path that would change not just the Lumini, but humanity's place in the galaxy forever. In the depths of space, Assembly warships were already moving, their commanders determined to maintain the order they'd preserved for millennia. But they had never faced humans before, and they had no idea just how far humanity would go to do what was right. The Horizon's engine core pulsed with unusual patterns as Lieutenant James Okonjo made another adjustment to the quantum field generators. For 2 weeks, they'd worked tirelessly to modify the ship's systems, but time was running out faster than anyone had predicted. Status report. Maya called from the bridge, watching as another solar flare erupted from the dying star. The good news is that the quantum field modifications are holding, James replied, his voice strained. The bad news is that we're burning through power cells twice as fast as calculated. We'll need more than we have to maintain a stable environment for all 4,000 Lumini. In the adjacent lab, Dr. Sarah Chen was surrounded by streams of light data, working directly with the Lumini to understand their needs. Captain, you need to see this, she called urgently. The star's core is collapsing faster than projected. We don't have 3 months. We barely have 3 weeks. Maya felt the weight of thousands of lives pressing down on her shoulders. Earth Command had officially disavowed their actions, leaving the Horizon alone against both nature and the Assembly. But the crew had voted unanimously to stay, even knowing the consequences. A warning klaxon suddenly blared through the ship. Multiple quantum signatures detected, the tactical officer announced. 3 Assembly vessels just dropped out of FTL at the system's edge. Maya's jaw tightened. Show me. The main screen displayed 3 sleek warships, their crystalline hulls reflecting the Red Giant's angry light. They were preservers, the Assembly's enforcement arm, tasked with maintaining the galaxy's natural order. Captain Rodriguez, a familiar voice filled the bridge as Zarin's image appeared. Your defiance ends now. Power down your systems and prepare for boarding. The Lumini situation will be resolved according to assembly protocols. Maya noticed the careful choice of words. They wouldn't kill the Lumini directly. They'd simply ensure no one could save them. A clean conscience through inaction. Sarah, Maya called over the internal comm, ignoring the assembly representative. How close are we to testing the quantum transfer system? We're ready for a small-scale test, but Sarah was cut off by a sudden power fluctuation that rocked the ship. Direct hit to our starboard shield generator, James reported. They're not waiting for our response. Maya's mind raced. The assembly ships were far more powerful, but the Horizon had something they didn't. Desperate creativity and a cause worth fighting for. James, remember that theory you mentioned, about using the Lumini's quantum field to mask our signature. A slow smile spread across James's face. It was theoretical, but with their help, yes. We'd need to synchronize our shield harmonics with their natural frequency. Do it, Maya ordered. Then to Sarah, begin the transfer test. Start with a small group of Lumini volunteers. We need to prove this works. The assembly ships moved to surround them, their weapons charging. But below, on the planet's surface, something extraordinary was happening. The Lumini had understood their plan without needing it explained. Waves of bioluminescence began pulsing in perfect synchronization with the Horizon's modified shields. Transfer commencing, Sarah announced. Through the viewport, Maya watched as streams of living light rose from the planet's surface, following carefully calibrated quantum pathways into the ship's converted cargo holds. Each stream was a family of Lumini, their consciousness maintained in a delicate quantum state. It's working. Sarah's voice cracked with emotion. Quantum coherence is stable. They're scared, but they're alive. The assembly ships opened fire, their energy weapons slicing through space, but where their beams should have struck the Horizon, they passed through empty space. The synchronized quantum field had rendered them virtually invisible. How long can we maintain this? Maya asked, watching as more streams of light rose from the surface. The field's holding, James replied, but we're building up dangerous levels of quantum resonance. We can't stay phased like this for more than an hour. Maya nodded grimly. Then we'd better make it count. Begin full evacuation protocols. Priority to the young and their direct caretakers. As the Horizon's crew worked with desperate efficiency, the assembly ships continued their blind assault, unable to lock onto their quantum-shifted target. But with each passing minute, the strain on the ship's systems grew worse. Warning lights began flashing across engineering consoles. Quantum resonance approaching critical levels, James reported. We got maybe 20 minutes before the field collapses. How many have we transferred? Maya asked. Just over 1,000, Sarah replied. But Captain, the adults are refusing to leave. They're channeling their remaining energy into maintaining the transfer corridors for their children. Maya felt her heart clench. Even now, facing extinction, the Lumini's first thought was for their young. She opened a channel to the surface. Please, she urged. We can save you all. Don't sacrifice yourselves. The response came in harmonies of light that brought tears to her eyes. Our children are our future, the Lumini replied. Save them, and our consciousness will live on through their shared dreams. This is not sacrifice, it is transformation. As the Horizon's quantum field began to fail, as assembly weapons finally found their target, the last streams of living light carried the future of a species into humanity's care. They had saved over 2,000 Lumini children and young adults, enough to ensure their survival, but at a terrible cost. The adult Lumini's final message burned itself into the ship's quantum receivers. Remember us not for our end, but for the dream we entrust to you. Show the galaxy that compassion is not weakness. It is the greatest strength of all. Maya watched their world one last time, its light finally dimming as the quantum field collapsed. The assembly ships were closing in, weapons charge, but she couldn't help smiling. They had already won the only victory that mattered. "Plot an escape course," she ordered. "Random jumps, unused routes. Let's show our guests what happens when you corner a human who's fighting for something worth believing in." The horizon shuddered as it dropped out of another emergency quantum jump. Warning lights flashed across every console as overtaxed systems struggled to maintain the delicate balance needed to keep their precious cargo alive. They'd been running for 3 days, making random jumps through unmapped sectors, but the assembly ships were still on their trail. In the converted cargo holds, 2,000 Lumini children pulsed with anxious light. Dr. Sarah Chen hadn't slept in days, working continuously to maintain the artificial quantum fields that kept them alive. She watched in wonder as patterns of thought and emotion rippled through their communal consciousness. "How are they holding up?" Maya asked, entering the observation room. Her uniform was wrinkled, dark circles under her eyes betraying her own exhaustion. "They're grieving," Sarah replied softly. "The loss of their parents, their world, but they're also adapting. Watch this." She gestured to a particular cluster of lights where young Lumini were interacting with the ship's quantum systems. "They're learning to interface with our technology, finding ways to help us maintain the fields. Their ability to manipulate quantum states is incredible." A violent tremor ran through the ship. "Captain to the bridge." James's voice came through the comm. "We've got problems." On the bridge, James's hands flew over the navigation controls. "The assembly ships are predicting our jump patterns. They're using probability algorithms to narrow down our possible routes. And we got another issue. The quantum wake from our jumps is starting to damage the fabric of space-time." Maya studied the tactical display. They were running out of options. The Horizon's innovations had kept them ahead so far, but they couldn't run forever. "How are our power reserves?" "Critical," James replied. "We can maintain the quantum fields for the Lumini, or make 2 more emergency jumps. Not both." As if in response to their dilemma, the observation room screens lit up with cascading patterns of light. Sarah's voice came through the comm, excited despite her exhaustion. "Captain, the Lumini children want to show us something. They've been communicating with the ship." Maya rushed back to the cargo hold. The scene that greeted her took her breath away. The young Lumini had arranged themselves in complex, 3-dimensional patterns, their quantum fields resonating in perfect harmony. Through their shared consciousness, they projected images directly into the minds of the watching humans. They showed ancient memories, passed down through generations, the secret of how their ancestors had first learned to manipulate quantum states. It wasn't just about technology or biology. It was about connection, about finding the threads that bound all things together at their most fundamental level. "This is incredible," Sarah whispered, watching data stream across her monitors. "They're not just showing us their past, they're teaching us how to see quantum relationships we never knew existed. The principles behind their quantum manipulation. It's like they've evolved to perceive an entirely different layer of reality." Another blast rocked the ship. On the main screen, 5 assembly vessels now pursued them, their weapons charging for another volley. But Maya barely noticed. She was transfixed by what the Lumini were revealing. "James," she called, her voice tight with controlled excitement. "Get down here. Bring every sensor reading you have from the assembly ship's quantum drives." As James worked with Sarah to analyze the data, the young Lumini continued their lesson. They showed how quantum fields could be woven together, how the very fabric of space-time could be adjusted like a conscious, living thing. Understanding dawned on James's face. "Their quantum perception. Captain, I think I know what they're suggesting. The assembly ships use quantum tunneling for their FTL drives. If we could synchronize our fields with theirs, using the Lumini's techniques, we could turn their own quantum wake against them." Sarah finished. "Create a cascading resonance that would force them to shut down their drives or risk tearing their ships apart." Maya felt a surge of hope, but also concern. Would it hurt them? The answer came from the Lumini themselves, their thoughts carrying subtle harmonics of reassurance. They weren't seeking revenge, only a way to protect their new family without causing unnecessary harm. "Begin the modifications," Maya ordered. "But we do this their way. No one else dies today." The next hours were a blur of activity as humans and Lumini worked together, combining their different ways of understanding reality. The young aliens' natural quantum awareness complemented human technical creativity in ways neither species had imagined possible. When the assembly ships caught up with them at the edge of a nebula, they found the horizon waiting. But before they could fire, the human ship released a carefully calibrated quantum pulse, one that carried within it the harmonious patterns of Lumini consciousness. The effect was immediate. The assembly vessel's quantum drives began to resonate dangerously, forcing their commanders to shut down or risk destruction. As they drifted powerless, Maya opened a channel to all ships. "This is Captain Rodriguez. We could disable your ships completely, but that's not who we are. That's not who the Lumini taught us to be. Look at your sensors. Study what just happened. This is what becomes possible when species work together instead of fearing each other." The response came from Zarin himself, but his usual cold certainty had been replaced by something closer to awe. "How did you? This quantum manipulation. It should be impossible." "Nothing is impossible," Maya replied, "when you stop seeing differences as threats and start seeing them as opportunities. The Lumini children didn't just survive. They showed us a new way to perceive reality itself. Imagine what other wonders we might discover if we stopped letting fear rule our decisions." As the assembly ships hung motionless in space, their commanders confronting the implications of what they'd witnessed, Maya turned to her crew. The Horizon had won more than just a tactical victory. They had proven that compassion and cooperation could overcome even the most deeply entrenched prejudices. But their journey wasn't over. They had saved the Lumini children, but now they had to find them a new home, and in doing so, perhaps help reshape the galaxy's understanding of what was truly possible when different species chose to light the darkness together. 3 weeks after their confrontation at the nebula's edge, the Horizon approached Earth, its precious cargo of Lumini children still safely nestled in their quantum fields. But they weren't alone. A delegation of assembly ships escorted them, not as captors, but as witnesses to something unprecedented in galactic history. Maya stood on the bridge, watching her home planet grow larger on the main screen. Dr. Sarah Chen and Lieutenant James Okonjo flanked her, their postures reflecting both exhaustion and pride. In the cargo holds below, the young Lumini's lights pulsed with anticipation. "The Assembly Council is ready to begin the emergency session," James reported. "They're broadcasting across all quantum frequencies." Maya nodded. After their demonstration of the Lumini children's abilities, the Assembly had been forced to reconsider their stance. The quantum manipulation techniques the children had shared had revolutionized their understanding of spacetime itself. But more importantly, the Lumini's willingness to share their knowledge despite everything they'd lost had shaken the Assembly's fundamental assumptions about primitive species. The main screen lit up with the faces of the full Assembly Council, representatives from dozens of advanced civilizations. Zarin spoke first, his crystalline form somehow less rigid than before. "Captain Rodriguez, crew of the Horizon, and children of the Lumini," he began formally. "We are gathered to address the unprecedented events of the past month. Your actions violated numerous assembly protocols." He paused, his next words carefully measured. "And in doing so, you have shown us the flaws in those very protocols." A murmur ran through the council. Maya felt the Lumini children's consciousness brush against her mind, sharing their hope and apprehension. Over the past weeks, the bond between the human crew and their quantum passengers had grown stronger. The children had learned to modulate their communications, making it easier for human minds to comprehend their thoughts. "The techniques you've demonstrated," Zarin continued, "the cooperation between your species, it suggests possibilities we had not considered. The Assembly's policy of non-intervention in extinction events was based on maintaining stability. But perhaps in our desire for stability, we sacrifice something greater. Progress, Maya supplied. Growth, the chance to learn from each other. Indeed, another council member spoke up. A gaseous being composed of swirling colors. The Lumini children have already shared innovations that could revolutionize quantum communications. Their perspective on reality itself, the being swirled thoughtfully. We were wrong to dismiss them as primitive simply because they were different. Sarah stepped forward. The Lumini don't just understand quantum mechanics. They experience it as naturally as we experience light and sound. Working with them has shown us that consciousness itself can exist in forms we never imagined. But more importantly, they've shown us the power of trust and cooperation. As if to emphasize her point, the horizon's quantum field suddenly lit up with a spectacular display. The Lumini children were projecting their thoughts not just to the ship's crew, but to the entire assembly. Images of their lost world, their parents' sacrifice, and their journey with the humans flowed through quantum channels, carrying with them the emotional depth that only shared consciousness could convey. The council chambers fell silent as the memories washed over them. Many of the representatives physically recoiled from the intensity of the experience. This was more than just information. It was understanding at its most fundamental level. "We propose," Zarin said finally, his voice carrying new harmonics of emotion, "a reformation of assembly protocols. The creation of a new division dedicated to protecting and preserving unique species, with humanity and the Lumini as founding members." Maya felt a surge of joy from the children below, but there was still one crucial matter to address. And their new home. Earth has already offered sanctuary. A human representative spoke up. "We've identified several locations suitable for their quantum biological needs. But more than that, we're offering partnership. The Lumini children will have the chance to grow, to teach, and to learn alongside us." The Assembly Council's vote was unanimous. As the session concluded, Maya turned to her crew. "Send word to begin preparation for the Lumini's transfer to their new home, and log a personal commendation for every member of this crew. They risked everything to do what was right." Later, as the horizon entered Earth orbit, Maya stood in the cargo hold among the softly pulsing lights of the Lumini children. Their consciousness touched hers, sharing feelings of gratitude, hope, and something deeper, a sense of belonging. "You gave us more than just survival," their thoughts whispered in her mind. "You showed us that even in our darkest moment, light can find new ways to shine." Sarah and James joined her, watching as Earth's first rays of sunlight filtered through the viewport. The light caught the quantum fields of the Lumini children, creating a symphony of color and consciousness that seemed to bridge the gap between two very different ways of experiencing reality. "What do you think the assembly will do now?" James asked softly. Maya smiled, feeling the warmth of 2,000 young minds dreaming of their future. "They'll adapt, just like we all do. That's the real lesson here. It's not about being the most advanced or the most powerful. It's about being willing to change, to grow, to see the universe through new eyes." As humanity prepared to welcome its new residents, as the assembly began its slow transformation toward a more inclusive future, the Lumini children shared one final thought with their human saviors. It rippled through quantum fields and human consciousness alike, a promise and a reminder. "In the darkest night, we found each other, and together, we will always light the way forward." The story of the horizon and the Lumini would be told countless times across the galaxy, a testament to what becomes possible when compassion overcomes fear, when different species choose to share their light instead of hiding it. But for Maya and her crew, for the Lumini children who had lost everything and found a new family among the stars, it wasn't just a story. It was a beginning.